Hello and welcome to episode 68 of our Conversations to Connect, Let's Get Real, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi ONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. Our conversation to connect this week is with the inspiring and amazing Debbie Page. Hi, Debbie. She's welcoming her from Black Diamond, Washington. So Debbie, I'm excited that we're going to be able to roll up our sleeves today and discuss rapid growth isn't always the best strategy. So before we jump in and discuss this intriguing conversation, I want to take a minute to introduce Debbie to our listeners and her passion for helping people transform business strategies into profits and sustainable growth. So Debbie Page is an internationally recognized and award-winning entrepreneur, business coach, and advocate for women's economic independence. She is recognized as a leading authority on cash flow and operations for women in business. For over 2 decades, Debbie has worked with women and money and has acquired, scaled, and sold 2 businesses of her own. Her clients achieve stunning success because of her commitment to accountability, execution, and the systems and processes that create sustainable and scalable businesses. And we're going to hear about that today. Debbie is also the proud parent to her lovable muppets. Buster, her 10-year-old rescue Labrador, Retriever, retired K9, and Walter, the 2-year-old Labrador Retriever. So welcome, Debbie.
I love it. Thank you so much. There's Buster in the background making a cameo appearance. So he's resting, as all good retirees should do.
Yes, perfect timing. Hey, so before we jump into our conversation today, rapid growth isn't always the best strategy. Share more with us, our listeners, a little bit more about your journey and throw in some downtime hobbies that you have.
I love it. Yeah. So I think like most everyone who's going to listen to this, Chuck and Gail here and, people who listen to it later, I still consider myself an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't wake up one morning and go, hey, I think I'm going to start a business or, I just, the opportunity presented itself. Right. So, working internal to an organization, moved into an independent contractor, window opened up to acquire a piece of that business that they were going to essentially discard. And I was like, but I really like that piece of the business. And so, was able to take that as kind of my first, stepping off point into actually owning the business. And I think, the big lesson that I took from that experience and what I'm so passionate about helping other people understand is just because I was good at doing the thing did not mean I knew how to run the business. And so one of the first pieces of advice I got from a great mentor of mine was, before you get in over your head, you need to get yourself a coach, a consultant. You need to get somebody in there with you to get things moving in the right direction, because you can learn all that. But you got to have somebody, who's going to help you. I didn't come from a family where, we were entrepreneurs or business owners. And so, I hadn't had that modeled for me, and I really did need to go out and hire that expertise. And so that's what I did. And so, yeah, when I'm not on Zoom with my clients, wherever they are, I take the, meeting you wherever you are to the nth degree. And I have for a very long time now. I was doing online Zoom meetings before the world required us to do online Zoom meetings a few years ago. You can find me taking long, I call them active marches with the Muppets. They're a very lively pair, so we walk very quickly. And the rest of the time you can find me usually in my garden. Like you, Cyndi, while I am not the food grower, I am the flower grower. It's just therapeutic to be out there. I also serve on the city council in my community. So and learning the ways of patience and the slow speed of government, and the dynamics that are at play there. And then, yeah, the other fun thing that I do with my fella is we do autocross once a month. So take the fun cars out for some very, as we call it, spirited driving in a controlled environment. So yeah, that's me.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. I didn't know about the autocross. That's a
Yeah,
new,
yeah.
new fun.
I took a class at the end of the year. He'd been trying to get me to go for about 2 years, and I was like, "No, no, 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 not me." And so finally, he did it under the, "Well, you like to learn things, and I am a lifelong learner." And he said, "It just would make you a better driver in general. Like, you should come and learn how to do this." And yeah, I knew within about 10 minutes what he was up to. I was
Oh
like,
my gosh,
"Oh,
that's
I
great.
see what you're doing." Yeah. So yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I'm not great at it yet. It's like anything else, learning a new skill, but it sure is fun.
Oh, fun. I love that. Well, you're always open to learning and, stretching yourself. And so I'm excited about this conversation today because we're going to be able to really jump into why rapid growth isn't always the best strategy. And some people get frustrated with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there's a few factors that are at play. There's I think the social pressure of being a business owner, and that we compare ourselves to the success of others, and other people compare their success to ours. And so, if you are not the one that is breaking all the records and has all the things and all the stuff, then somehow there's a perception that you're not as good as, because those are all things that are very measurable and very tangible, right? And it's not, let's be honest, it's just not sexy to talk about, yeah, I spent the last 3 months really ensuring that, my operations, my protocols and my systems are really set up for success. So when we launch our new product next month, we're confident that, our website is going to hold, and our customer service is going to, stay strong, and like all the things that go into supporting that. It's just not, that's not how our culture has been led to discuss business. And I want people to start thinking more about that. If you're a solopreneur and doing consulting work individually, you still have processes and systems that need to be improved in your business that will help you scale to the degree that you want to scale. Duplicating your effort over and over again is not rewarding, and frankly, it's exhausting.
Right. I'm trying to think of the quote or the saying, but it's like, an overnight success 10 years later, something like that,
Yep,
right? So
exactly.
that's what people look at. They look at people who are successful, but they don't really understand that it took almost a decade in some cases to be able to get their feet under them for them to be that overnight success.
Yeah, because we don't, and again, that's not what we talk about. We don't talk about all the late nights. We don't talk about all the, investments that you make in the back end of your business infrastructure wise. Those are just not the things that we talk about. We talk about the output, right? What everyone else sees. We don't talk about the input, what we as the business owner, the entrepreneur, the visionary puts into ensuring that that happens. And I really encourage my clients to use their voice and have those conversations with their colleagues, and to normalize that. If you think about it, like, even we'll say rewind the clock back to 2019, it was a little bit, it's not more on the personal side, but I think you'll get where I'm going here. Back in 2019, if we were talking about our mental health, it was a little bit like, okay, well, I hope that works out for you, right? But post the pandemic, there was this normalization of talking about our emotional, our physical, our spiritual, our mental well-being. And that's the kind of things that I want business owners to be able to normalize. I want us to normalize the conversations about, some of the drudgery that we go through in order to have the shiny output, on the other side. Um, I think it encourages other people, to be brave and bold and talk about where they get stuck or they struggle. And when you do that, when you open yourself up and you start talking to other, if you don't have a coach or an accountability partner or mastermind group, but you start talking about that real time with other business owners, you're going to find that there's somebody else who's, 2 steps ahead of you. And they're like, oh, yeah, I did that. Here, let me show you what I did, or let me share with you the resources that I had. And I think it just goes back to the fact that we don't have to do all this on our own.
Right. So we could be able to support each other with, the journey that we've been on,
Mhm.
and, be able to really, what is the word I'm looking for? Just, not only be a contribution to that other person, but it feels good to be able to give too,
Oh,
so it's not
100%.
always like, oh, I'm taking from, other people. It's like breathing. You breathe in and you breathe out. You're being a contribution, you're being able to glean up things from others. And frankly, that's one of the big motivations for doing the Champion Connector program, is that we have that opportunity to collaborate, to support each other, because being an entrepreneur is a lonely road at times, or can be.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's lots of it. I have clients who, we do amazing work together, and it seems that on a rotating basis, not every month, not every client, but on a rotating basis, there's sort of a 911, send up the bat signal phone call because they just need to vent. You can't, as a business owner, you definitely want to have warm, friendly relationships with your employees, your team, your staff, all the things. But there are some things that as the owner, you just can't share, with the team that looks up to you as being the visionary and the leader. And so you got to put your team together for that. And if that's a coach or a consultant, great. If that is, having a mastermind group or an accountability partner, it's the same idea of being able to share that. And I think the other piece to that, Cyndi, is, there's no shame in not knowing, or having messed something up. We've all done it. We've all messed things up. We all have had that moment where I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. Um, and it's really okay to say that, and to reach out or raise your hand to other people and say, hey, I'm stuck here. And that's the strength and vulnerability part of things, is you can put yourself out there as being really smart as a business consultant, as a CPA, as a attorney. That's great, but I'm going to say, not understanding of a particular mechanism, a cog in the wheel of your business, isn't a reflection on your ability to do that work. It's actually really smart of you to be able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this part. And I know in order to grow, I've got to figure this out. So if that means I need to hire someone, or I need to, have someone do the research and show me how to do it, like whatever that is, depending on your business. But it's those kind of foundational things. And even though I say foundational, that's not just focused on new businesses. We all have to go and tend to our foundation in our business, in order to be able to have that strong growth.
That is beautiful. And it reminds me of an analogy that I actually used when I was homeschooling my kids. And I counseled and encourage other moms is, remember, you're the general contractor of your business.
Mhm.
And, it applies to what you're talking about also. And as a general contractor, you can subcontract
Mhm.
out pieces that you need support with.
Mhm.
And when we think about it in those terms, it doesn't feel like we're a failure. It feels like we're empowered, we're in control. Obviously we're getting somebody that's a subcontractor that's going to do a really good job in that specialty, whether it's a bathroom or whatever. Maybe they're not as adept at doing outside landscaping work. And so that's something that's really beautiful and important. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because there is no shame in it. It's
Mhm.
actually, we need to understand that we're not the end all be all. And and that's how it works in commerce also, because if I don't really understand like beauty care products and stuff like that, I know that Gail does.
Mhm.
And so that I can be able to access her, her knowledge in that. Or for Chuck, I've leaned on him a lot when we launched our chapter in Vancouver. You were able to support me with that. Chuck was able to help,
Mhm.
communicate how the spreadsheet worked that we used to pay the chapter connector there. So I mean, it's beautiful when you really think of it as like a dance, and we can be able to support each other with in the areas of expertise that we have. I think it's a healthier mindset. It doesn't make you feel like, oh, I'm a failure. Nobody, people aren't going to take me seriously. I think we need to shift that, and really talking about it, I think, is a big access point to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all the necessary part of I said it to the group when I spoke earlier this month. It's the slow down to speed up part, right? It's I have to sometimes take a half a step back in order to get everything ready, so I can take off and then have that sustained growth that I want. I mean, we've all seen and, well, read about at least the companies that, had this crazy exponential growth, and it was all a house of cards for whatever reason, right? Whether it was, systems wise, whether it was integrity wise, whatever it was, like they just didn't have it all together. And they can only get so far. Any of us can only get just so far until we have to either hit pause and kind of take a few steps back in order to get going again, or the whole thing does collapse around us. And like I said to the group, it can show up in things like, lack of customer service, right? So you get rapid growth in a company, and one of the things that people are saying about you as a business is you do this amazing job of customer service. We always felt like we were, cared about as individuals, and then the company starts to grow. And typically, because the process of customer service wasn't documented and it wasn't able to be taught, it was based upon probably one or two humans, who then, when six or seven more humans came in, like the process hadn't been documented. So what made the customer service special was those individuals and their unique, secret sauce. I'm a big believer that that secret sauce can be trained, but when you're trying to train it in a reactive setting, as opposed to bringing people in and as an example, saying, "This is our culture. These are our values. This is what we believe in," right? Because people will self-select out. Even during the interview process, you start using all the squishy words that talk about the culture and the camaraderie and the warmth and the humanity that is your business. Somebody who's like, "Ooh, that just sounds a little too much for me," they're just going to stop the interview process. And that's great. It's good for everyone. It's good for you because you don't have that person in a situation that they're not comfortable in. It's great for them because they're not in a situation that they're not going to thrive in either. But it shows up in a variety of ways. And I think that, people get focused on, rapid growth being all about the dollars, and that is a component of it. But it's all the things that go into contributing to those dollars, which is, what your company is built on. If it's, customer service, if it's the quality of the work or the product that you manufacture. If you start getting on too fast of a clip and you lose that quality control mechanism, and you don't have somebody who's as dedicated to it as you are, it can be the undoing of a company. And it takes, and we all know this, like, I don't remember the statistic that I once read, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, Somebody who's dissatisfied will talk, 5 or 10 times more to people about the dissatisfaction of the product, the service, whatever their experience was, versus those of us who are happy with something, we might tell like one or two people. But it tends to be like when we have, and this is a, interesting little concept, but when we have a bad or a negative experience, we broadcast that much more loudly than we have a really positive experience. And that's why, as business owners, it's so important for us to make sure that we have a good, strong control mechanism in the quality of the product, the quality of the work, the quality of the experience that we bring, which then allows for that kind of sustainable, growth and ultimately, the big overnight explosion, if you will.
Right. And product and service, those are a little more controllable
Mhm.
for quality control. Whereas the customer experience, like you say, if it's not created as a system and structure and documented, it could be lost. And so maybe, 85% of the time they're followed up on. But what about that, the extra amount that, for whatever reason, they get,
Mhm.
what do they call it? Fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
And
I think about a company that I recently hired to do some work here, for me, and I was having kind of a challenging time connecting with the person that was supposed to do the work. And I don't I don't think it was their problem, like, in hindsight. I think it was sort of a dispatching and execution problem. And when I finally got into customer service, it was late in the day, and this company had come really highly recommended from a community of people that I have a great deal of trust in. And when I finally, stopped fruttering around with all the nonsense that had been going on that day, and I got to customer service, it was late in the day, just before 5 o'clock. And I said, I need this resolved. We don't, we need to stop with this, like, oh, we'll get back to you kind of thing. And I don't know if it was the tone of my voice or if I finally got the right person, but I had been so disappointed that day. All day long had been a series of really not successful customer service experiences as a customer. Um, and they said, "Nope, I will call you and have this resolved before I go home for the day." And I'm sort of in my, mind thinking, "Sure you will, because that's been my experience today, right?" Um,
right.
and somewhere around 6:30, I got the phone call. Now, I didn't think that person was still gonna be there at 6:30. I don't know what their shift was, I didn't ask. But somewhere around 6:30, they called me and said, "Okay, we've got it solved, today was an exception, it's not how we like to be." Like, this individual took the time to go back historically throughout the day and to address point by point by point what had been happening, provided a resolution, that obviously wasn't gonna happen that night, but happened the next morning, and then was able to offer, some financial offset for that as well. Now that completely changed my experience with that company, right? Because had my last experience been 5 o'clock phone call, I'll call you before I'm done, and then no phone call, and then the next morning somebody calls me, like, I would have been, at the top of my brain blowing, lesson. And so, I have a lot of respect for however that happened inside that company. Now, I gave them a lot of really good feedback on what they could have done to improve their process along the way. But these are the kinds of things that when you as a business owner, when any of us as business owners have a challenge inside the process of our business, I always say, look at how it was resolved, right? Start there, and then work your way back up and figure out where you can make adjustments to, fix things to make it a more positive experience, if you will. Even if the outcome isn't great, right? So it gives you many touch points all the way back upstream. I think of it like a choose your own adventure, right? So when you got to this score, you could have made a really not great customer service decision, or you could have gone this way. Like, and then what's the cost of that, pro con, and continue taking them through that. And when you as a business can do that, and again, even when you're a solopreneur, you have the ability to do that. Think
Yes.
of it with your intake process, right? So somebody is interested in having a consultation with you for your services. What does that documented process look like? And is that something that you can sustain? Do you do exactly the same thing every time so that the people who are interested in you, if they were to compare notes, would all talk about how they schedule a time with Chuck, they get an email confirmation from Chuck, they have an opportunity to put some information in, ideas, context that they want to talk about. There's a follow-up process. Every single person should have the same experience that you get to control. And if you don't, then there's an opportunity for you to kind of step back and go, wait a minute, I can make this better all the way around.
Right. So we can, you don't have to be perfect. You
No.
have to be able to recover quickly. And
Mhm.
so in the illustration of your story, you didn't have a great first impression
Mm.
at all. In fact, it was turning sour very quickly, even with, recommendation from people that you respect and value. But that person at the end, they turned it around for you. And so, then you're able to go, okay, well, it wasn't a great deal, but they did recover. Like
Yeah,
they fumbled, but they they recovered at the end line, right? Or
right.
in the end. And so that's really important to be able to, we don't have to hold ourselves to a point of perfection,
Mm-mm.
but we want to the goal, I think, is customer service, how to give a good good experience for the customer.
Mhm.
And like we were talking about, sometimes we have a little bit more control over product and service.
Mhm.
But when people feel taken for granted, in fact, there's a statistic for that. 68% of customers who leave a business,
Mhm.
it's not because of poor quality or service, product or service. It's because they feel like they were taken for granted.
Mhm.
And when I hear those statistics, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
that's a lot. That's over half of their business.
Yeah. If
And
if you think about that too, Cyndi, as a business owner, it's a good reminder for us all to consider what we think makes our customers feel valued is
right.
maybe not what they want to experience in terms of feeling valued. And that's where those interactions and conversations with customers, long-term customers and clients, even ones who leave, like if you're not doing exit interviews with your folks, who are leaving you, you're missing out on some really amazing opportunity for you to grow.
Yeah, perception is key.
Mm.
Because we may think we're leaving people, oh, well, I'm thanking them. I'm sending an email. I'm sending a card. But what is it that makes them feel? That's a really good point.
Mhm.
To be able to really get a sense of it's not necessarily what we think. Okay, we covered that. We've got good customer service. What is it that they're expecting or maybe unexpected, something unexpected that would be make a big difference.
For sure. Absolutely, for sure.
Wow, I love that. Um, so Debbie, you talked about at our event last week how important the resources and infrastructure strain is. We talked about that a little bit. But one of the things I remember you mentioning, in addition to dissatisfied customers, was having diminished product and service quality, right? So tell us more about that. How important is that for a business? I mean, for some of us who have like network marketing and the product and service is out of our hands, the customers just get it. But there's brick and mortar businesses out there that
Mhm.
it is a factor.
Yeah, so I think the example that I used um, in in our conversation last week was with the bookkeeping company that had grown exponentially, and they had done a great job of marketing, online marketing, networking, all the things. And so their team, they were an offshoot of another company. So this group of humans went off and started their own business, but the business grew exponentially. And so now you have, say, I'm going to say there were three bookkeepers who were already doing, I would say they were at about 65, 70% capacity when the the growth curve really took a turn. And the owner of the company, in their excitement to grow the business, hadn't thought about what happens when my team gets to capacity, had never even asked the question on what is capacity, and had not factored in what attention to detail needs to go into making sure that the output, right? So those quarterly reports, those monthly reports that you're getting from your bookkeeper are accurate. And so what they had started to see was as the growth curve went up, there was this increase in customers going, wait a minute, this is all messed up. Like, why did you put $5,000 expense for last month in the travel budget? I didn't go anywhere. Like, what is that all about? Right. So they were starting to just, because they were the processing part of this, the bookkeepers were getting so much pressure from an operations standpoint to get the business out the door so we can get more business in the door. It took a toll on the company and the reputation, and they had not had any conversation about with their staff, first of all, on what the expectation was about capacity. And had they done that, they would have had a pretty clear understanding that these people were kind of tapped out for what they could do, and that pushing them. There's this moment where you can't push people to 100% output. We all as humans need to have some of that time. So is capacity 85%? Is it 80? Like, those are the questions they needed to ask themselves. And they hadn't created a plan for onboarding. Like, when we get to this threshold, it's time for us to be interviewing, because by this threshold, we have to have new people in. And so they hadn't talked about what their funnel or their pipeline for recruiting would look like, as well. And so when I came on board, um, it was a mess. It was pretty messy when I got there, and spending time understanding, the core team that had been there, sort of their frustration with the process, making sure they felt heard. These new people who had come in, who had gotten kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool and sort of wished well, for success, which isn't sustainable in any business model. And then you've got the owner of the company, who their heart is totally in the right place, and they're super passionate about this, and they really want their team to be successful, but they missed the mark and they don't know what to do, right? So it took us a few months to kind of settle things down. We actually had to kind of turn the faucet way, way down in terms of expecting business. It was a really hard thing for that individual. We had to even say, we'd welcome new business, but at this point we're on a wait list. And so if you'd like to wait, you can. Otherwise, we'll refer you to another colleague. And that was really hard. And this is that rapid growth isn't always the right step. Forcing this business owner to actually stop taking new business and to get the system inside the company and the culture fixed completely changed everything. When about 9 months later, we turned it back on slowly and we tested it, right? Because we needed to know, is it going to break? There's all sorts of things that you think are going to work until you actually start working. And that it is even true with humans, right? This isn't just about, a computer or a piece of technology. It's about people. Like, we all have our breaking points, and what does that look like? But we found that during that time together, that slow down to speed up, has made all the difference for them. And they now have a really sustainable group of bookkeepers who process the information successfully. They have a client experience manager who makes sure that there's consistency amongst everyone. If somebody is unhappy for some reason, that client manager is the first person that's involved in the conversation. Just, it changed everything for this business. But that's what it looks like, from the human side, when growth starts to happen, a little too quickly. And that can happen if you're a 1 or 2 person operation as well. You don't need to have, a team of half a dozen bookkeepers and, an accountant and an owner.
Right. And as painful as that story, is to hear and experience,
Hmm.
it's better than having their customers, go through a negative experience, because like you said, they broadcast it more.
Hmm.
We need, 10 times the positives to outweigh one negative, right?
Yeah, and it took that, and it took, regaining the trust of some people, and we used a variety of different strategies to bring some people back. We all have been in that experience where we've left a bookkeeper for whatever reason, or the bookkeeper has retired and we've had to find someone else. So we all know the trauma that goes along with finding
Mm.
a new trusted financial partner in our business. And so we had to work really hard to, the ones that hadn't completely ran out the door, we worked really hard to just hang on to them, and then had to earn their trust back over that period of time. And, again, pulled a few levers in order to do that. Didn't save everyone, but definitely, to your point, Cyndi, reduce the impact, that the business, I know, would have felt, had we not done some of that.
Yeah, less casualties as a result of that.
Mhm. True.
But what comes to mind in that whole illustration also is how critical good communication is.
Mm.
And, like to your point, I think it was your point too, building strong connections is really important. So people, and then having provided good customer service along the way, I think people are more like, okay, stuff happens. I'm
Mm.
still here. I know that they're really trying hard, and, they're, in general, my experience has been that they offer good quality customer service. Um, so anyway, just the communication piece is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to be willing to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we tested some things, and we found that um, one of the ideas that we tested with a group of very dissatisfied customers, was if they found a mistake in their monthly output, their profit and loss balance sheet, kind of their monthly summary. If they found a mistake in their monthly output, they would not pay for that month's service. And so that was so it was this interesting dynamic of now, I had to get buy-in with the teams that were working with these very dissatisfied people, and I had to get them to buy in and to understand that they weren't going to be, beat down if they made a mistake. It's human, it's possible. But what I found was inside this group, there was actually two people that really loved the challenge, and they were so attention to detail. They took the attitude of bring it.
Bring it on.
Absolutely bring it. Like this person can find a mistake in my reporting,
Right.
then that's
Right.
it. But what it also did for them, and what they modeled for a couple of the other people in the group, was they modeled back, and this comes back to your point of communication, Cyndi, how in touch they then were with the business owner, right? So a lot of times a business owner will just kind of shove their monthly data to you, and it's a little bit like, sort of an adventure to figure out, like, what is this cat, so oftentimes bookkeepers, and just using these guys as an example, is, they'll make an assumption based upon what they get as input, right? So that's the whole garbage in, garbage out. If you're not really helping your bookkeeper understand what you want them to do with it, they're not mind readers. You and I have talked about this for a long time. Like, we're not mind readers. I can't guess what you want me to do with it. But what happened was these people who were like game on began to communicate. So when they got Chuck's, monthly information, they'd go through it, they'd scan it real quick, they'd identify whatever the pieces were that they weren't clear on, and now they were back in touch with Chuck. Hey, Chuck, I've got these three things here. Can you tell me a little bit more about them? What were they for, et cetera, et cetera. And then they came back. During the time that we did that, we only had one person that we had to pay their monthly retainer back to. And the guy who was on that account was so frustrated with himself. And he even said afterwards, because it was a big part of communication, he said, if I had just picked up the phone and asked the question, we would have saved the money.
Right.
He said, but I didn't. I made the assumption and I was wrong.
Right.
And, I'm pretty confident that that's never going to happen again. But that was back to communication, right? And the fun part there was that when we told the client, hey, you're right, there was a mistake on this, and so we're going to refund it back to you. The client said, no, 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 don't worry about that. Like, you guys are doing such a good job. I don't want the company to take a hit for this. And I was like, oh, those are some good people to have as client.
Right.
Like, but remember, this was a pool of clients that were really pissed off for a while, right? And those were the ones that we said, we will keep you, and this is the game that this is what we're going to propose.
Right.
And so to take somebody who was basically 2 steps away from being all the way out the door, big middle finger, all the things, to somebody who was so impressed over a period of time that they said, no, 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 don't do that. Like, that doesn't seem right. So we ultimately came to an agreement with them, and I think they kind of split it. So, because it was an integrity thing, right? The business
Sure.
owner,
Yeah.
we had
And that's
made
the
this
word I was
deal.
just going to say is integrity was high.
Yeah, and so it
They
was like,
had
business owner was like,
restored integrity.
I don't want to not do that. And the other guy was like, okay, fine, let's split it then.
Yeah.
Let's split it. You made your deal, but I have seen so much change that I don't want to take that from you. And so that's kind of where they came to it. So yeah. So it
Wow.
shows up in a lot of ways, but again, communication is a big part of it.
Right. And okay, so that leads to you talked also about sustainable growth relies on adaptability and resilience, which is the story you just shared is a beautiful illustration of that, because it's all about embracing continually improving, right? Improving your systems and structures, prioritizing different things. One thing I was thinking about, I was looking over my notes from your talk earlier, timing is critical. So when you talk about systems and structures, we've got a few minutes before we'll open it up for Q&A. But when you talk about systems and structures, I'm always, encouraging people to take advantage of windows in the calendar year when it's a better time. So like summer, we're moving into summer right now. This is the time that I mentor people to work on your contacts and how you communicate with people. Go back, communicate with people. What's your birthday? Is this the right address? Any changes that you need to make to your contact manager to have it be up to date, because you can't move into, say, if your business is product and service and the end of the year is when the majority of your income it comes in. That's not the time to be working on infrastructure, right?
No, that's a very bad time to do that. And I appreciate, Cyndi, so much that you mentor other people to do that too. When I worked in financial services in my early 20s, I sold life insurance, and there was a joke in the office that insurance agents take 6 months of the year off. They just do it a half a day at a time. And so that like really stuck with me. I thought, oh my God, that's horrible. I don't ever want to be that person. And so that comes into this like kind of summer thing, right? For some businesses, there's definitely a cycle, and summer, can slow down. Now, I caution people to say, don't buy into the summer slowdown just because you want to take the time off. If you want to take the time off, then you say, I am slowing down for the summer, not, well, my business is slowed down, so I'm going to slow down. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like there's that kind of semantics. But if your business does have a cycle, there's some seasonality to it, take advantage of that, right? If you're not as full with your client engagements and appointments, during a certain time of the year, then identify the things that you can be working on. The end of the year is another great example, right? A lot of businesses really, take and encourage their people to take time off at the end of the year. Most of my clients close their offices the last 2 weeks of the year. They don't do client meetings. They don't bring in any new business. But what the owners of the company are doing, and their leaders inside the company are doing, is they're spending those last 2 weeks really thinking about infrastructure. And so based upon the goals that they set, in October, what are the infrastructure things that need to have some changes or some modifications come to them now? They put some plans in place so that come January 1st, they've got the outreach going if they need to bring in a contractor or whatever it is. So use those times. If you're in a cycle in your business where you've maybe had some clients roll off and your pipeline wasn't necessarily as full as it could have been to come in behind it, then use that time to go back and look at your website, look at your nurture sequence. When was the last time that thing was dusted off? When somebody opts into your email, what is that email sequence like? Is there a way that you can repurpose some of that information? Is there something else that you've created content wise that you can, refresh for some other purpose in the future? There's lots of ways to take advantage of time. It is a fleeting commodity. And so you can sit and you can feel woeful or sorry for yourself or whatever it is, or you can be like, hey, this is really a gift for me right now. And I'm gonna get, I've had on my ever-growing list, these things that keep getting shoved to the bottom because I don't have time. But now that I have some time, it's time literally for me to do the thing that I keep saying I'm going to do.
Well, and you're such a, you're so consistent in your commitment to helping people with their goals in October, in the fall, right?
Mhm.
So that they can hit the ground running in January. And so they don't have to have that, okay, January, you look at your
Mhm.
goals and then implement them in spring and March or so.
Yeah.
I've always appreciated your support with that, because you're right. It's about being forward thinking. It's about being prepared. One thing I found also that in business, I remember in the early years, I would like push. And I was just starting my business. So I needed to get that financial, influx going to be able to sustain being in business. But what I started to notice is there were times of the year, it didn't matter how much I pushed, because other people were not open to it because of, the timing of the year, like the first of the year or the end of the year or something like that. So I finally like stepped back and like, okay, those are the times when I need to work on my business
Mhm.
and really the infrastructure of my business
Right.
and not push as hard because it's almost like you're, you know, um, on a treadmill. You're not gaining any traction. You're just expending a lot of energy.
Well, the thing is, you can expend the same amount of energy, but just focus it somewhere else, right? And
Right.
that's the piece that we can get so like, I'm all about biz dev. I got to be out going to the networking things and doing the follow up and having the coffee and all the things. But if it's the time of year where everybody is freaking out because the family's coming into town, it's the holidays, they're making pies and all the things, like it doesn't matter how much you want them to become a customer or client,
No,
they're hard stop, they're out, right? So
that's
take
right.
that energy, right, and pour it into something else in your business because there are some of us that are just wired that way. So just redirect your energy instead, like you're saying, Cyndi, and focus on something else inside the business. Let the people be, right? And continue to love
Right.
on them, but give them some space.
Right.
But then just get into the thing that you've been delaying because you've been hustling so hard over here on the people side.
Yeah. And again, just to put a bow around this conversation, it's really all about communication. It's about awareness. It's about flexibility. Not to be just like blindsided here with the blinders
Mhm.
and just keep moving forward to see what's going on. We all had to adjust our businesses during, this the downtime, the last number of years, right? And I think those who really paid attention and looked at what was going on and how they could adapt. I remember the conversation you and I had, Debbie. It was actually March 10th of 2020. We went, remember we went virtual with Exceptional Connections. You were gracious enough to do a conversation to connect in lieu of a live event that we had planned. And I remember the sage advice that you gave to everybody is this is not the time to go to sleep.
Yeah.
This is not the time to clean out your closet. This is the time to pay attention and to, innovate and to really be aware of what's going on and find out how you can best serve your customers and still be viable.
Yeah.
And I remember I really appreciated that because the tendency is, okay, everybody's locked down. I should just go through and like, clean all my closets and do that. And I remember not doing that. I
Mhm.
was like purposeful about how can I serve my community? How can I keep my community together? What structures and systems can I put in place to keep us together? What do I need to do now so that on the other side of this, I still have an organization? And I'm grateful that
Mhm.
Exceptional Connections is still here after all that.
Mhm.
And, over the years, I have done those closets, but, that wasn't the time to zone out.
Mm-mm. No, it wasn't. And I will say, and I say this to people all the time, in our area, you are one of less than a handful of networking organizations, communities of humans that not only survived that time, but also thrived. There are still organizations that cannot figure out how to get back to in-person meetings. They just can't. And so where we as people have come back to this place where we understand like there is something very important about the humanity of connecting in person. Like this is great, like virtual is great, it's convenient, it has all the things. And there is also a good case to be made for connecting as people because again like you and I know people do business with people they know like and trust, and so we can get to know you, then we can make some decisions about liking, but we have to actually get in someone's field in order to get, I think, in my opinion, to cross into that trust category. So,
Yes. And I think if we had any doubts about that before,
mhm,
we've learned that the power of the human connection, of that authenticity. I just had as much as busy as our last meeting was, or you were our spotlight speaker, I just found myself for a moment looking around, and it just brought me so much joy to
mhm,
see so many people reconnecting and meeting new friends and
right,
hugging and being each other's space
mhm,
and feeling just that affinity,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful, and it makes it makes it all worthwhile when I see that and give myself that moment to just soak it in, because it's not about me, it's about the need of our community and the ability for us to be, the importance for us to be in each other's space and to be able to just be that contribution to one another that is not as easily accessible in this format.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm grateful that to have Chuck and Gail and you and for us
Mhm.
to be here and for those who are going to listen afterwards. But there's nothing that takes the place of being in each other's presence and company. And I'm so grateful for that. But how nice that we have this technology, because if the great pause had happened 10 years ago, kind of wonder how that would have gone, right?
Well, if you think about adaptability, I even said that when I spoke last week. Um, those who made the adjustment quickly, even imperfectly, but quickly, were the ones who sustained during that
Mm,
time. The ones who either poo-pooed and said, no, 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 everything's going to be back to order shortly, or who got, again, and this kind of brings us full circle back to the beginning, they didn't know how to do it, and they didn't have somebody who knew how to do it. And so they just kept resisting it instead of reaching out and saying, hey, I need someone to show me how to get this done.
right.
Mm.
Right. Wow. So many great lessons that we can, remember, put into our businesses today, and also keep close to our hearts and close to our conscious,
Yeah.
because things are still a little wobbly in the
Yeah.
world, right? Even though we may want to be on the other side of it, I don't think we are. And so I think we still need to, have those adaptability, communication, all the things we've talked about today. I think they're just as important to remember now as they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Why don't we go ahead and open? So if anybody has any questions, any ahas or epiphanies on things that Debbie and I have talked about, this is a great time to be able to enter into the conversation. And then Debbie still has her big announcement to make. So we'll have Debbie share that whenever you're ready, Debbie.
Okay.
Um, so feel free to unmute yourself if you want to enter in the conversation. We'd love to chat with you.
This is the awkward moment, right?
I know.
I would just like to say I appreciate what you guys talked about as far as the being adaptability and what we've had to do having Zoom, but also having in person. I
Yeah.
think having that as a hybrid approach
Mhm.
to the things that we do is really important. And I think in some ways it is something that has increased the exposure to different people, that it's been a good thing having to use it. Not that that time was good, but having the ability and now going into doing something that is both in person and on Zoom with that hybrid approach, I think is very valuable for businesses. Debbie, what do you think
Yeah, I,
about
I
those
mean,
things?
I think, thank you, Gail, for that. And I agree. I think, so I live out here in Black Diamond. So on a good day, it takes me an hour to get to Bellevue. It takes me an hour to get to Seattle. It takes me about an hour and a half to get up to Exceptional Connections. And that's on the good days, right? And so on a typical, pre-cycle, if you will, if I met somebody in a networking event, I would like to have coffee with them. I'll be really frank, I'm not going to invest an hour and a half one way, an hour and a half another way, and then a good hour 15 or so conversation. That is a full day just to meet with one person, right?
Yeah.
But and I choose to live out here. I get that. So I'm able to say, hey, in the interest of both of our times, because and I always say, I'm pretty sure you're not coming to Black Diamond to have coffee with me, right? So how about if we do it on Zoom, right? And then when I make those connections, I'm able to say, hey, Gail, I'm actually going to be up in Linwood for Exceptional Connections next month. Are you going? Will I see you there? Do you want to meet for a little bit beforehand? So it is about everyone finding their cadence on this. But I do think that there is something really beautiful about being able to bring both worlds together, and not just live in that online space. So great point.
Yeah.
Well, and it's wise of you too to make that option available because it goes both ways.
Mm.
And that's one of the things I remember during COVID. Everybody was like, "Oh, I've saved so much time. I don't have to dress. I don't have to drive. We could just have a meeting. I could be in my pajama bottoms. And that's great. But once we started going back live, people realized, oh, that it's worth it sometimes. It's worth it to get dressed and leave the house and have communicate with people because that's where you really make that connection. And then the follow-up piece can happen on Zoom,
Right.
where we can take notes and we can get to know each other. And so it is nice. It's the hybrid piece is a model, but it's also, I think we've come to realize the value in it and where we can use it most effectively.
True.
Yeah, there are different values. There's that in-person piece is very important because there is like you said, Cyndi, I think Debbie, you said you have to get in that field of that person. You kind of get into where that person is, and there's it's a different feeling. It's a different thing than on Zoom, but having both of them, I just think has been really good.
Stuff. What about you, Chuck?
Yeah, so again, Debbie, I really appreciate your contribution to this. You always have all that great wisdom and experience that you put out there that is so on the mark. I mean, it's always been great. We've known each other for a lot of years already. So I really appreciate all the growth that you've gone through as well.
Yeah.
And but you're so right. I think that one of the things, I always hammer people on systems and processes because, so many times I see, especially in small business, people just wing it because their business is at a stage where they can just manhandle it, right? Yeah, they can just grip it and just strangle it, if it wants to. But and I think the issue with it, because I've many times run across small business owners that are actually running their businesses out of a spiral notebook. And because I'd say, well, and they think that a P&L is a business plan. And we know it's not, but they think that. And sometimes you really got to struggle with them to get them to see the light. And of course, what I see with not with most, but with many small businesses, processes and systems are a pain in the neck to them because they view it as a hindrance because they want to manhandle everything, right?
Pew, 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 pew. I can be flexible. Look at me.
Yeah, right. I can handle anything, right? But as they begin to expand and actually hire employees and stuff, they can't do that anymore. And I've seen so much chaos in small businesses because they don't have a business plan, and even when they do, they don't really do an in-depth thinking about it. You can see they don't really take it apart and put it back together. And so that's why I think what you have to offer people is so great because it's obvious you do that. And so especially business owners, as we know, small business owners can be the worst because I've always done it this way, or this is what worked. This is how I got to be successful. Well, guess what? You're running toward a cliff.
Yeah. Well,
and they don't think so.
Yeah. And I think you guys have all heard me say this, like what got us here isn't going to get us there.
Exactly.
And that's your point, Chuck, which is like, it is good on you. Like, good on you. You got here in your spiral notebook. That's awesome. And are you ready to see what's on the other side of that spiral notebook? Like, are you ready? Are you ready? And this is about really helping all the business owners understand that when you can put the spiral notebook down and you can really set that structure inside your business, you're able to serve more people than you ever thought possible.
Yeah.
And I have yet to meet a business owner who didn't want to serve more people. That's the number one thing. What do you want to do? I want to serve more people. I want to make a bigger difference, right? Money comes in third every single time. Every single time. So tap into like how you're going to be able to serve more people, and that's where we can, get them going in the right direction. So they're lucky to have you, Chuck.
Well, I hope so. They don't think so sometimes. But then that's, that's when you're successful, because, you know, always during the process, you become the villain
Oh, yeah.
until they see the light and see. But I always tell them, well, okay, do what you got to do. Do what you got, what got you here. But let me know when you have enough pain.
Yeah.
Because when you're sitting there at 10 o'clock at night and you're getting there at 6 in the morning, and you don't know why, then we'll have a conversation, right? So that's what I think you say, So I always tell them, how much freedom do you want? So anyway, I think I really appreciate what you have to say, what you always offer the community. It's really great.
I love it. Well, thank you.
Well, let's bring it home here. Before we do, though, anybody who's listening or those who have joined us today, if they want to learn how to work with you, they can go to debbiepage.com and tell them more about how they can engage with you if they're interested in learning more.
Yeah, so the website has been freshened up. You can go to debbiepage.com. You can see how I work with people on more of an advisor or coaching model. So, one-to-one. You can also read and understand how I work inside an organization on more of a fractional model. So again, with the example of the company and the bookkeeping company and sort of where they were, that was a fractional opportunity that was scoped out and scaled out over time. So you can get an understanding, because I think sometimes people are like, what does that even mean? Right. So kind of reading through that, I think, is helpful. There's some really great case studies in there. So we have updated the website to now have some case studies. So really, you'll see the problem that a business was running into, and what I saw when we met and what I proposed they could do, and then how that ultimately changed for them during the course of our relationship. Because I think we all learn better through story. So kind of understanding, some of that as well. And then there is also on the website the quiz that you guys all got to take, which helps you kind of understand, like, there you go, that's it. Do you need to be doing this on your own? And so kind of taking that quiz and kind of seeing, I think we all need to check ourselves from time to time, and to really see, like, am I operating at the top of my capacity for running my business? And if I'm not, then maybe I should take a look at bringing somebody else in. And so these questions kind of help you understand, like, where your business is and what you might want to consider if you are looking to bring somebody on in a coaching or consulting and advisory manner. So yeah, so Debbie.
Beautiful. So Debbie, drum roll, please. Share with us your big announcement.
Yeah, so this is super exciting. Some of you know me. Oh, can we see it? No.
It's black right now, but it says started.
Yeah, so screen sharing is paused. So let's try this again. I always love it when there's a good announcement that gets it's the excitement and the anticipation.
The anticipation is building here.
Okay, let's try this.
You're still the co-host.
There we go.
Okay,
so
Yay.
So I am launching a podcast next month, June 2024. We don't have our exact date, but the podcast is called Profitably Ever After. It's going to be a weekly podcast, and it's going to tap into all the 20 some years of running and operating and coaching businesses that I have. It's going to be, it's not me featuring someone else. It's going to be like me coaching you every single week. So for some people who are familiar, you may have been part of my Facebook group a while ago, and I would do these weekly learn and earns where I would come on for about a half hour and talk about a business topic. Yep, Cyndi was there.
I was there.
Talk about a business topic every single week, and I did that for years. And then life got a little complicated for a while, and I made the decision that I didn't need to keep efforting on that, and that I needed to step back. And so now here we are 4 years later. And the podcast is going to essentially be the introduction of those learn and earns, but in a podcast format. So they're going to be nice and easy. They're going to be the kind of thing you can listen to while you're driving to drop your kids off at school in the morning, or going to get that morning cup of coffee, or on your way back. They won't last more than a half hour. I don't think there's anything I need to talk about for that long. But I think in 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to, you're going to get some really good insight and information, and a couple of solid takeaways every single time. Add to that, I'm going to be featuring one of my Muppets in every episode. So if you're a dog lover, then stay to the end and you'll get to hear some crazy shenanigan that one of them actually pulled off the previous week. So I'm really excited to be able to do this. Cyndi, thank you. Your community is the first to hear about this. I haven't told anyone other than the person I've been hatching this idea with. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll do, after the first month, we'll have an episode dedicated to kind of Q&A, meaning you'll have a chance to submit business questions, and we'll review those on our side. And then I'll do a whole show around what are the common questions that are coming up from the last month, either from previous episodes or things that are going on in people's businesses. So yeah, so watch for the big announcements on Profitably Ever After.
Beautiful. Well, that's very exciting, and I can't wait to hear more and be able to get that on the calendar. So please do keep me posted on that, so I could let just communicate that to our community, and where to go to be able to access that would be helpful. So this is being recorded. So is it okay that people that are not in this here right now, they can hear about it through that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're listening to this, then it is somewhere post mid-June 2024. You can find Profitably Ever After wherever you listen to your podcast. So if you're a Stitcher person, you'll find it there. If you're an Apple person, you'll find it there. It will be on all the platforms, and you will also be able to find it on YouTube. So that will be somewhere else that people can go to find it as well. So,
well, that's so exciting, and thank you very much for launching it here first, or talking about your plans. We appreciate it so much. So DebbiePage.com if you want to learn more about the amazing Debbie. And Debbie, just any closing thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah, just, stay committed to what it is that you're doing. There are a lot of shiny objects out there, a lot of things that can get you distracted, but the reason that you were put here. You have your path and you have your purpose. And acknowledging where you need support in terms of the structure of your business, the systems, because at the end of the day, guys, we can serve more people when we make more money. And when you have your processes in place, you will have the opportunity to have more money at the end, which allows you to turn back around and do more good in the world. And that's really what it's all about. So I appreciate you, as always, Cyndi, having me here. You're always so generous. And thanks for Gail and Chuck for being here with us today and taking time out of the middle of your day to do this. And then for everyone else who's investing the time to listen along as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. So remember to make every connection an exceptional connection. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Later. Bye.
Bye.